And so Priyanshu, again, I would like to introduce her because I'm recording it here. So I would like to introduce her. She's a PhD student from ICGB Delhi, and she's going to talk about co-immunoprecipitation, challenges, and its applications in the wet lab context. Priyanshu, you may start.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Today, in this session. I'm going to discuss co-immunoprecipitation technique, a technique to identify interacting partners of one particular specific protein. But before we going to discuss, first we should know about immunoprecipitation and co-immunoprecipitation. So, immunoprecipitation is the technique that is mainly used to purify a protein of interest from a mixture of protein. Here I am talking about cell lysate. Once you get the purified protein, you can analyze it by Western blot, ELISA, and mass spectrometry. But another technique is co-immunoprecipitation. So this technique is not only purify a specific protein from a protein mixture, it can also purify a complete protein complex, or we can say that interacting partners. So after uh, after getting these interacting partners, you can analyze it by Western blot, ELISA, mass spec, and in both technique, one important point is in both technique, specific antibody and solid phase beats are required. So both technique are functional similarity, but IP is mainly used to isolate individual protein from a mixture, but co-IP is mainly used to isolate a complete whole intact protein complex. So this technique is known as co-immunoprecipitation, and this is the brief schematic diagram of co-immunoprecipitation assay. So here so many proteins from cell lysate. First, we incubate it with a specific antibody X protein against. So we incubate first with X antibody specific to X protein, and then after incubation, we removed all unbound proteins from the solution, and we get XY complex. Then further we analyzed it through Western blot or mass spectrometry. So if you know the Y protein, then you can use Western blot. But if you don't know, if these prey proteins are completely unknown, then you can go for mass spectrometry analysis. So here are some steps, some important step of co-immunoprecipitation technique. So one step is sample preparation, protein sample preparation. Second step is how would you form protein antibody bead complex, and then remove all unnecessary unbound protein from the solution, because in cell lysate there are 1000 or 3000, 10,000 proteins. So you need to remove all these unbounded proteins from the solution. Then after, elution of that particular bait prey protein from the complex, and you can use it for further validation purpose. If you want to use for validation purpose, you can validate it through Western blot, IFA, confocal. And if you don't know the uh, prey protein, then you can go for mass spectrometric analysis, mass spectrometry. So let's understand step by step. First, protein sample preparation. So major source of protein is our tissues or cells. So first we lysed these tissues or cells with co-IP lysis buffer, and this lysis buffer are important player in this co-IP assay system, because these are the factors that involve in formation of complex that maintain the complex formation. So once you lyse the cells or tissues with co-IP lysis buffer, you get the protein with all cellular debris. After centrifugation, you get the soup, and in the soup, there are so many thousand proteins. So after that, you incubate it with antibody, specific antibody. Like here, you can say X protein, antibody against X protein. So incubate it with antibodies. So incubation timing is again optimization step. So if one particular antibody have high affinity to bind to another to its antigen, so incubation timing is less. But if antibody bind to antigen with lower affinity, then you can increase the incubation timing for more binding, more formation of antigen antibody complex. After the formation of antigen antibody complex, incubate it with protein AG beads. So what is the role of protein AG beads here? Protein AG beads are a kind of matrix or substrate where your antibody binds. So after that, once antigen antibody complex and protein AG bead incubation, you get the bait prey antibody bead complex. But in this complex, you can also find there are some non-specific proteins that bind to the beads or other unbound proteins. So you want to wash all these unbound proteins. So once you get this complex, wash it with the CoIP wash buffer. And in CoIP wash buffer, remove all unbound proteins, all non-specific proteins from the solution, and you get those proteins, you get the antigen antibody complex with interacting partners and beads. And there are some other non-specific proteins that are bound to FC region of antibody or other area of other sequence of antibody. These are non-specific binding. So again, second or two, three steps of washing, you can remove all non-specific proteins and you get interacting partners with protein and antigen antibody bead complex. So after this, you want to isolate these two proteins in the solution. So what you can do is we used elution buffers. So here elution buffer are mainly composed of tris and NaCl, but one important constituent is primary amine. So what is the role of primary amine is? Primary amine is mainly targeting these links. So the antigen antibody complex formation is basically depends on the interaction bond interactions. So primary amines disrupt the antigen antibody interactions and the proteins and elutes are coming out in the solution. So once you get the bait prey proteins in the solution, you can use it for identification through mass spectrometry. So through this, you can validate it through different ways. First, we learn how would you prepare mass spectrometric samples. So in mass spectrometric samples, what happens? You have antibodies, beads, and proteins with interacting partners in the solution. First, we incubate it with dithiothretanol. So this dithiothretanol is DTT, is a kind of reducing agent. So what this product does, this compound is mainly used to reduce the disulfide bonds of a particular proteins and prevent intramolecular interactions and also intermolecular interactions. So after this treatment, what happens? Like all disulfide bonds break, and this process is known as disulfide reduction. After that, you can incubate it with iodoacetamide. So this iodoacetamide is another chemical agent, or we can say that it is an alkylating agent, which basically used to bind thiol group on the sulfide bond. So once you get the reduced form of cysteine residues, reduced form of disulfide bond, you need to block it. And for blocking, we use idoacetamide. Once idoacetamide block that particular thiol group of cysteine residue, so there is no chance of formation of inter or intramolecular protein disulfide bond formation. Okay, so once you get the linearized form of proteins, you can use we process it with the trypsin digestion protocol. So trypsin is basically a peptidase which is used to break the proteins into peptides. So I'm giving you a one question: how does trypsin digest the protein, and what is the site of trypsin where it cleaves? So you can comment in chat box. Then after, once we get the trypsin digested peptides, so what happens? Till here, in upstream process of co-IP, we know that there are so many buffers, so many reagents we used. So in this trypsin digested peptides, there are so many chemical compounds. So you want to remove all these chemical compounds, all these salts. So for this, we use C18 reverse phase column. This is a kind of column which is used to concentrate these peptides only and remove all desalting, all salts from the co-IP buffers. So after that, we further and go for mass spectrometry, and then we get the analysis. Then we get the reading, and once we get the analysis is in the form of data sheet. So see the data sheet first. So this is the simple mass spectrometric analysis data sheet. You can see here accession number, or we can say that proteins that we get from the mass spectrometry analysis, mass spectrometry, and scores coverage. And the very important point for us is the samples presence of these proteins in different samples. So you can see that we used three different samples, three different biological replicates. So you can see that this protein, this green color protein, SCD, is present in sample number 1, sample number 2, and sample number 3. Means it is more prominent interacting partner. It may be more prominent interacting partner. You can validate it, but right now it is prominent. And when we go down, we can see that there are so other factors which are not present in any of samples. So you can remove it, and then after you can see there are some factors, there are some proteins which are present in one sample but not present in other samples. You should remove this factor as well. So after that, there are some factors like here in which two are present, two having high peptides, and one sample have low peak. So you can use this as well for as a interaction study per se. So once you exclude all these positive, all these prominent interacting partners from the data sheet, you want to validate it further. So validation per se, before validation, you need to sure that these are the interacting partners. So for this, what you can do is, here I'm going to give you a basic example. This is completely basic. See, in experimental samples, what happened? Like if suppose you get 8 different types of proteins in mass spec data, okay? But there are some other control samples as well. So control samples are what type of samples? So these samples are those samples like your antibody are present, your antibody bound with beads, but not your antigen is present. So suppose, let's say I'm talking about, just give a simple description, like there is one control sample, another one is infected sample. So if you infection samples have one viral protein or viral protein per se, so in control samples there is no protein, no viral protein. So these are the control samples. So if in experimental conditions or in infection samples, if you get 8 different types of proteins, and in control samples you get 4 different types of protein, so you can see ZKLM. Suppose ZKLM, both proteins are 4 different proteins are present in both conditions. So remove all these proteins from the control samples, and then you get the more prominent interacting partners for your validation per se. So this is because sometimes what happens, like your antibody are very specific for your antigen, but there are some other proteins in cell system which less affinity for antibody and bind to that epitope, and these are coming in your experimental samples, but these are not prominent antigens, so it is also coming in control samples. I think makes sense. So these 4 different proteins are further validated through interaction study, and once you get these factors, analyzed it with by pathway analysis and further validated through different ways. So I think bioinfo persons know that pathway analysis. So till here, we have learned about co-immunoprecipitation technique. So I'm giving you 2 different examples to understand it very um efficiently. So there's one paper which is talking about chikungunya viral protein NSP3, which interact with one particular host protein, which is FHL1. So in this technique, what they have done is they use chickpea reporter virus. So what is chickpea reporter virus? So chickpea reporter virus is a kind of lab generated infectious clones in which the NSP3, chickpea specific NSP3 protein. So this NSP3 is a non-structural protein, and in this virus, chickpea virus, this NSP3 protein is tagged with mCherry. So mCherry is a red fluorescence protein. Yes, RFP. So after that, this chickpea reporter virus, what they have done is they infect this virus in HEK with different MOI, MOI 5 and 50. So what is the meaning of MOI? MOI is the multiplicity of infection. So if one cell infected by one viral particle, that is MOI 1. So you can calculate it at MOI 5 and 50. So once we get the infected cells in the plate or in the system, you can image it through microscopy, because these chickpea reporter viruses, when it propagate, it gives RFP, mCherry, because NSP3 proteins produce, and there is a tag with NSP3 protein, so virus showing red color. Okay, so we lysed it with lysis buffer and get the supernatant. So supernatant containing mCherry with NSP3 and NSP3 bound with different interacting factors. So we need to, what they done is they used co-IP with mCherry antibody. So this mCherry antibody, they used mCherry antibody for co-immunoprecipitation technique, and first they used, they performed mass spectrometry for interacting partners, and then they performed a Western blot. So here I'm giving you an example of Western blot. So in this Western blot, you can see that this NI is showing non-infection samples. So in non-infection samples, you can see that in input. So what is the meaning of input? Input is the lysate before IP. Okay. So this FHL1, obviously it is present because in input, this is the host factor. But mCherry is not present. So mCherry with NSP3 is not present because NI non-infected samples. But in MOI5, you can see that MOI5 in input samples, FHL1 present, mCherry was also present. But once co-IP performed, what happened? FHL1 are more prominently present in IP samples, and also in also NSP3 also present. So this showing that this NSP3 interact with FHL1. But to further validate it, further sure it, they used MOI50. In MOI50, what happens? Like production of proteins goes high. So in that case, you can see that MOI50, the NSP3 protein is high. And with respect to FHL1 is also high. So these are the ways that you can validate the interacting partners. Okay. There's another example. I think this is very hot topic in recent study, that is SARS-CoV-2. So there is one paper that showing SARS-CoV protein interactions for host for knowing host targets and for drug repurposing. So what they have done is they used 26 different proteins of COVID-19, and these 26 different proteins are cloned, different clones with 2x streptavidin tag. So this is a kind of not completely co-immunoprecipitation technique, but this is a affinity purification technique. If you don't have antibody, so what you can do is you clone your protein, you clone your gene in one particular uh, vector with your tag, and you can use antibody against the tag. So these are the other ways you so that you can purify interacting partners. So in this study, what they had done is they used HEK cells, and they transfect these proteins with streptavidin tag. They transfect these proteins vectors cloned with streptavidin tag in this HEK cells and purified it with this streptavidin tactin. So for more clarity, I'm showing this as well. So what happens in this is the very new technique, streptotactin. So this is the bead and where the streptavidin tag 2 binds. But in this in this process, they used this twin streptavidin tag 2, so that this causes high binding affinity. So after once they get the purification, they use it for mass spectrometry analysis. So in mass spectrometry analysis, what they found is they found 26 different proteins interact with 332 different human proteins, and these proteins are various, and these are in different pathways. So what they have done is they used gene ontology enrichment analysis, and um, these enrichment analysis they take they have used top hit targets and then analyze the tissue expression. These analyze the expression profiling of those targets, those interacting partners, and also they also checked the target profiling or upon infection, upon COVID infection, so that they further performed comparative network viral network analysis. So these are the different ways so that you can validate the host and viral interaction study or host interaction study. So these are the different ways. So I hope you understand. uh, in application point of view, this technique is very cheaper because buffers are very cheap. Okay, and you can use buffers many more time. But and also low abundant proteins, cells having low abundant proteins, you can identify or isolate those as well. So these are the applications with mostly in advantages point of view. See, in this type of technique is much more important because they are used at almost physiological conditions, our body conditions. Like suppose one protein is in native form, it binds to another protein in a native form, but If you use the denaturing condition, so proteins denatured and then shape change, and then there is no binding at all with two different proteins. So this technique is important because this technique maintain the physiological condition. That is main important point. And then you can use these eluted protein complex for further downstream, for western blot, for MOSPEC, and also you can validate these interacting partner through IFA, through confocal, various ways. So these are the advantages. Main disadvantages is suppose protein which is low affinity to antigen, so maybe it is not detecting. Or there are some time like some proteins interact with other factor for a very short time period. So you can't imagine that particular time so that you can isolate both promising factors. So these are the disadvantages of OIP technique, but my opinion, it is a good technique. So let's see my troubleshoots, my challenges. So here I'm going to tell you what I was facing. So first first challenge I faced, bait protein is not captured from sample. So maybe because of protein. So what happened in that case, once when you can't get bait protein in the sample in elute. So bait protein is the antigen. So it may be because of that antibody is very low amount. So concentration is very low. So antigen concentration is also low. So you cannot get in Western blot. So this is the one challenge I was facing. Second was is antibody is detected with eluted protein complex. Means when we get the illusion, what happened, like once we run the gel Western blot, there is another band showing the promising result. That band is antibody. So what happened in that case? Maybe because during washing, because during coupling, like when once we link the bead with antibody, this cross linking is very less. So you can increase the cross linking condition and you can increase the concentration, or after washing, continuously repetitive washing and analyze the washing sample so that you can check the antibody is coming out or not. So this is the very small tricky point. Anyone can use it. And third challenge I'm facing is bait protein is captured, but no interacting prey protein are detected. Like antigen is coming out in elute, but there is no interacting partners. So it's frustrating, I think. So in that case, I can say that there are some causes like protein-protein interactions are weak. So maybe during washing, these interactions are completely diminished. Okay. So in that case, I can suggest use different wash buffer or decrease the concentration of constituents of wash buffer so that interactions is intact. And the second important point I can suggest that you can use UV cross linker. So this UV cross linker is basically used at the cell stage so that every proteins present at close contact or close interaction, weak interacting proteins or strong interacting proteins all are cross-linked. So then there is no issue with bait protein captured and no interacting prey proteins are detected. And another cause with this point is maybe sometimes what happens, like antibody, when you bought one antibody specific to one particular protein, that protein is in single form in lab, but in cellular condition, this protein, that particular protein is in complex form with different proteins interacting with each other. So what happens sometimes, the domain of that particular protein which bind to antigen, which bind to antibody is domain is shared with another protein. So another protein bind to this protein. Okay. I think I'm getting confused. So another protein. So in that case, what happens? Like one protein, you have one antibody with specific to one particular X protein, and this X protein interact in cellular system. What happens? This X protein interact with different other proteins. So maybe the site of antibody binding is blocked by other proteins. So you cannot get the antibody in the proteins in the solution. So in that case, you can use another antibody of different epitope of that particular antigen, so that you get you get your result. And after all these discussion, all these lecture, I'm giving you one important point is save all flow throughs. Means in complete co-IP experiment, there are 16 or 17 flow throughs are coming. So washing step, cleaning of incubation step, pre-clear lysate, every flow through. Save all flow through to solve troubleshooting, so that you know that at which step you are wrong. So that's all. Divya? Hello, Divya? I'm done. If you guys have any questions related to this topic, please comment on chat, write on chat box or YouTube channel. So can I see? So first question is how primary amine play role. Here I didn't get it. Divya?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Divya. Can you take up the questions?
Yeah, I can take up the question. So I try to unmute this person to ask you a question. So Rati Ranjankar, hello,
Yeah.
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So can you ask
So
this question to Priyanshu directly what you meant?
yeah, actually, there was one slide like uh, mm, for primary amines, like they were being used for co like coamine precipitation or something like that. So yeah, yeah, this one illusion buffer. So how this primary amine like play role in like using like in this illusion buffer for detect all the for identifying the particular elutes.
So what primary amine does is once you know that this particular antibody, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So once you know the antigen antibody complex interactions, so this antigen antibody interactions is basically a non-covalent interaction. So these interactions are with amino group of a particular amino acid. Okay. So once we put the primary amines in this solution, what happen? This non-covalent interactions disrupt and primary amine bind to that particular region. Okay, so this two proteins comes out in the solution.
Okay, but
So are you convinced?
no, I still didn't get it. For example, there are like if you're using primary amine, so there will be only amine groups or some alkyl or aryl or next group, like all these things will be in that solution.
Can't hear you
So,
very properly.
Can you be a bit louder?
okay, so primary amine, those are like those will be only amino groups or something with NH2 or something like that in the solution.
These are amines. These are amines. These are the compounds in which
Yeah,
there
these
is
are amines, primary amines. There are only groups. There are only
yeah.
chemical groups.
Yes.
Yeah. So how they play role in? Okay, fine.
What happened?
Either.
See, I'm telling you. So what happened? Like this protein have some particular amino group in the amino acid,
Yeah.
right? So this amino group interact with another amino group of antibody. Okay.
Mhm.
So what primary amine does is it replaces this protein and interact with this amino group or this carboxyl group of amino acid of this antibody. Okay,
Yeah.
this is a kind of replacement pattern. So your
Okay.
proteins are detached and amine groups linked to that particular interactions. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I got it now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. There is another question from Godwin James from YouTube, and is tagging the bait protein in the N terminal or C terminal affect the affinity with the prey? How do you decide which portion to tag?
Okay. So I think bait protein tagging may affect the affinity of prey, but you can decide it through like optimization. Like in my case, suppose one protein tagged with any particular HA or his tag or any other tags. So these tags are only used when we don't have specific antibody of that particular protein. So you can use it for that person, that per se, but in the point of tagging of N terminal or C terminal, it may affect the prey affinity, but these are the like optimization or these are the like experimental way so that you can get, suppose if you form two clones, one with the N terminal tags and another with the C terminal tag, and you can see that in which clone you get more interacting factors, so you use that particular technique, that particular experimental procedure further. These are the optimization and these are the just trial and test.
And anybody, if you have any questions? Do you want to add up anything, Priyanshu?
So I'm just tell to everyone like the main important point is save all flow throughs, because that is important to solve the troubleshooting, because in every step what happened you really don't know, because all steps are completely clear. You don't know where antibody goes, where antigen goes. So in that case, save all flow through so that you can check like at which step I'm wrong, or at which step I'm optimizing. I will optimize it, or like experimental procedures.
So where it goes, you mean the binding specificity?
Sorry.
So you said like if you do not know where would the antibody go or something. So
Yeah,
does it mean
exactly.
you mean
Because
the
in
binding specificity?
yeah, in what like what happens in sometimes antibody not very specifically bind to beads. In that case, what happens, like complete antibody comes in wash buffer. So then you cannot get the weight proteins or interacting partners because antibody was completely washed out. So when once you save all flow throughs, you can check that at which step I'm wrong, at which step I need to optimize or increase the buffer concentration or decrease the buffer concentration so that I can optimize in different ways and solve this troubleshooting. So this is the test and trial complete experiment, but this experiment gives the promising result, and that's all.
Okay, and there is another question from Rati Ranjankar as well, so I'll unmute him.
Sure.
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah.
you may.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you discussed the paper regarding the COVID situation, COVID thing. My question is like how one can go for designing antibody against that antidote which will neutralize the antibodies, or one can develop an assay to identify IgG or IgM antibodies post-infection.
Designing antibody is completely different topic, I think. But in this paper, they are using another kind of streptavidin tactin XT beads. In that, the antibody contain bind to that particular streptavidin. So in this paper, they are using they use these these molecules, but I think antibody generation, for this you can use peptide based antibody generation or uh, like in-house antibody production. So there are three ways by which you can generate your antibody. Like suppose what happened, like you have one particular protein and you want to process, you want to generate an antibody. So take one significant or one conserved region and of the peptide sequence, and use that particular peptide in in-house mice injection to generate antibody. Or you can, if you clone it in that particular expression vector and purify that particular protein and use it for in-house generation of mice or rabbit antibody, then you can use those antibody for your experiments.
Yeah, I got it. And what if I have already identified the conserved epitope sequences across COVID-2, COVID-1, and MARS?
Yeah. So you want antibody of that conserved region sequences, right?
No. Actually, for example, I'm using bioinformatic analysis to identify conserved epitope sequences for SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-1, and MARS. I have already identified the conserved sequences. For example, per se, so I want to design antibody based on those conserved proteins, conserved sequences, and the proteins. And if I am going to design antibody against that antidote, and which will neutralizing those antibodies,
Mhm.
how I can develop one assay, or like using wet lab or something, uh, identify that IgG and IgM antibodies post
So
infection.
this is completely a different experiment, and like there are some assays that you can use it for IgG, IgM testing as in a COVID test. So
Yeah.
these are the, like some different perspectives. So you can use neutralization assay if you have one particular antibody of specific to conserved region. this is completely a different topic, I think.
Yeah, it's a different topic, but I'm just asking if like if there is any idea to go forward, like go further.
That
Or
case, like, so, uh, so can you repeat your question? I'm analyzing
okay, fine. Yeah,
and
sure, sure,
thinking
sure.
like what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, definitely. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
for example, I'm using bioinformatics analysis. I have identified the conjugate region, the conjugate epitope sequences across
Okay.
SARS-CoV-2,
Mhm.
SARS-CoV-1, and MERS.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm, and for designing antibody
Mm-hmm.
against those
Mm-hmm.
epitope,
Mm-hmm.
mm, and uh, uh, and to identify and also an assay like wet lab based assay to identify IgG and IgM antibodies after
Yes,
infection,
yes, yes. There are so
post
many wet
infection.
lab assays that you can use it for identification of IgG and IgM analysis.
Okay.
There are so many. So there is one ELISA assay. You can use ELISA assay. So in ELISA assay, what happens? Uh, suppose you want to check the IgG, IgM in the sera sample. Okay, in infected sera sample. That is your task, right? So in that case, what you can do is put your proteins, put your particular epitopes, conserved epitopes or peptides on the plate of ELISA plate, and then block with uh, BSA 5% or 3% BSA, and wash it. After washing, incubate your sample. So sample is sera sample. So that sera sample contain IgG, IgM. So these IgG, IgM is specific to capsid or envelope or of infected of viral proteins, right? So these IgG, IgM goes and bind to one particular region of the epitopes. So after binding, what you can do is you put your secondary, and these secondary goes and bind to IgG or IgM present in the solution or in the plate. So after washing, you can further you used a substrate to check that what is the concentration of IgG in the sera sample or IgM in the sera sample. So this is the way you can use it, and this technique is known as sandwich ELISA. So this is very promising in case of COVID-19 sample testing.
I think this is still, it's okay, like Priyanshu answered this question, but it's quite irrelevant to the current
Yeah.
topic today. And we can have like another session on different types of ELISA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this was related to the paper, so I asked. So I'm sorry if
Okay, okay.
I.
It's okay.
Okay,
It's okay.
okay, I understand that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. And to wind up, one last question from Godwin, which is from YouTube. Why strep tag is preferred over others? What is twin strep tag and any advantages? I think this is
So
again relevant to the paper.
yes, this twin strap tag. So what happened? Like in previous studies, they use strap tag. So strap tag, single strap tag. What happens? Like they interact with streptavidin tactin beads. So these are the complete replacement of protein AG beads that I already discussed in earlier steps. So these are the replacement. So streptavidin tactin bind to this particular loop of the streptavidin tag. This is single loop. So for giving more promising result, what they modified is they increase the streptavidin tag. So they use twin tag, and these are the magnetic beads tags. So in this case, what happens? This is the advantage of CoIP is these magnetic beads tag. So once you put the bead and the complex on the magnetic stand, the solution in the bead containing all interacting partners or all interacting proteins, they are going to attach on the surface of magnetic bead. So this is the way you can remove the centrifugal force, because in the previous co-IP technique, what I explained is, in every step you need to centrifuge at 1000 G for removing soup and um, taking all pellets, like, right? So in that case, this centrifugal force sometimes causes some kind of uh, problem in decreasing the weak interaction of protein, like decrease the probability of factors. Like sometimes what happens, two proteins are very weak interacting. So in centrifugal in centrifugation process, what happens, they are completely dissociate. So in that case you cannot get that weak factors. So these are the advantages of twin streptavidin tags. So these are the completely magnetic stand way. That's all.
Okay. And I think that answers the question, I guess. And it was a very nice session, Priyanshu, and hope many people would have benefited through the live as well. And any questions, any further questions, you can always post through the Telegram group of LLB School. I mean, either through LL Bio or LL Bio Info. And also, you can also comment those recorded videos in the YouTube actually. So thank you everyone, and thank you for joining us today.